The night it all began to turn, my mother lifted her wine glass at the head of the table and said, loud enough for the whole restaurant to hear, "Let's not talk about what Della does for a living. Some of us are trying to eat." Everyone laughed. My brother Marcus laughed hardest, the way he always did, with his head tipped back so you could admire his teeth. I sat there in my good blazer with my hands folded, and I smiled. Because that is what I had trained myself to do. What none of them knew was that my phone was buzzing in my bag, with a voicemail from the owner of the most expensive hotel in the city, and that the message would change all of our lives. I want you to understand the wound first, because the ending only means something if you feel the beginning. For 9 years, I had run a cleaning company. I started it with a mop, a secondhand vacuum, and a list of 3 apartments. I built it into a company with 40 employees, uniforms, insurance, a van fleet, and contracts with office towers and boutique hotels. And in 9 years, not one member of my family had ever said the word proud. What they said instead was embarrassing. What they said was, when are you going to get a real job? What they said, at holidays when a neighbor asked, was, oh, Della is between things. My mother's name is Diane. She spent 30 years as a receptionist at a law firm, and she never forgave the world for not making her a lawyer. She measured people by their collars. A clean white collar meant a person mattered. A pair of rubber gloves meant a person did not. When I told her, at 29, that I was going to clean houses for money and build something of my own, she pressed her lips together and said, "Please don't tell the Hendersons." The Hendersons were neighbors. That was her first thought. Not, are you safe? Not, how can I help? Her first thought was who might find out. My brother Marcus was the golden one. He sold cars, then he sold insurance, then he sold something involving other people's money that none of us ever fully understood. And every time he changed careers, the family called it a new venture and toasted him. Marcus had a way of walking into a room and making it feel like the meeting had finally started. He wore watches that cost more than my first van. And he had spent our entire adult lives making sure that whatever I built, he stood a little taller than it, so that the light always seemed to come from him. The company was called Meridian Care. I chose the name because a meridian is the highest point the sun reaches in a day. And I wanted my clients to feel like their space had been lifted to its best possible version. I designed the logo myself at a kitchen table at 2 a.m. I remember the smell of the marker and the sound of my daughter breathing in the next room. I had a child by then, a quiet, watchful girl named Ruth, and everything I did so that she would never once hear anyone tell her that her mother's work was shameful. Those first years were hard, in a way that is difficult to describe to people who have never scrubbed a stranger's bathroom at 6 a.m. My hands cracked at the knuckles every winter. I learned which cleaning products ruined marble and which ones saved it. I learned that if you are kind and you are early and you never ever cut a corner, a client will tell 3 friends, and those 3 friends will tell 9. I did not have money for advertising. My advertising was the shine on a countertop and the folded corner of a towel. That was the whole strategy. Do the work so well that the room speaks for you. The first real turning point came in my 3rd year, when a small hotel called the Alder House, 22 rooms, family-owned, took a chance on me. Their old cleaning contractor had let them down before a big weekend, and I answered the phone at 9 at night and said, "We'll be there at 5 in the morning." We were. We cleaned that whole hotel top to bottom before the first guest woke, and the owner, a tired, kind man named Mr. Alder, shook my hand and said, "You founded this company yourself?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Then I'll sign with the founder." And he did. He wrote it right there on the contract, in his own hand, next to my name. Founder, Meridian Care. I kept that piece of paper. I want you to remember it. It sat in a box for 6 years, and it would end up meaning everything. But my family never saw the Alder House contract. They never saw the 40 employees or the insurance or the van fleet. They saw the uniform. Once, at a barbecue, Marcus picked up my company polo shirt off the back of a chair, held it up by the shoulders like it was a dead animal, and said, "Imagine paying people to wear this." Everyone laughed. My mother laughed. My cousin filmed it. I took the shirt back and folded it, and I did not say anything, because I had learned that if I defended myself, the story became, "Della is so sensitive," instead of "Marcus is so cruel." Here is a small thing I have never told anyone. I used to keep 2 versions of my life. There was the version I lived Monday through Friday, where I signed contracts and made payroll and had grown men in suits call me boss. And there was the version I performed at family dinners, where I was Della, who cleans houses, poor thing, between things. Don't tell the Hendersons. I got so good at switching between them that sometimes driving home from a dinner, I would have to remind myself which one was real. The real one was the one with the calluses. I just kept forgetting to believe it. The voicemail that buzzed in my bag that first night at dinner was from a woman named Miss Okafor. She was the operations director for a hotel group I had only read about. The kind that owns glass towers with names like the Meridian Grand, and rooftop bars where a single cocktail costs what I once made in a day. Her message was short. "Miss Hart, we are opening our new flagship property, and we are reviewing our vendor partners. Your company came very highly recommended. I would like to speak with the founder directly. Please call me back." The founder directly. She said it twice in that first week, and I did not understand yet why she kept insisting on that exact word. I called her back the next morning from my van, parked outside an office building, with a coffee going cold in the cup holder. Ms. Okafor had a warm, precise voice. She told me their flagship hotel, the Ashford Meridian, was 3 months from opening. And they wanted a cleaning partner who could handle 200 rooms, a spa, 3 restaurants, and a level of finish that most companies simply could not deliver. She said my name had come up more than once from people whose bathrooms and boardrooms I had spent years perfecting. Then she said the thing that made my heart lift right out of my chest. "We'd like this to be a founding partnership. We honor the people who build things. We'd want to recognize the founder personally at our opening reception." I hung up. And I sat in that van and I cried. The good kind. The kind that surprises you. 9 years, 40 employees, 200 rooms. A reception where they would honor the founder. For one bright minute, I let myself imagine my mother in that lobby, seeing what I had actually built, having no choice but to see it. I imagined Marcus with nothing clever to say. I drove home that night, and I told my family none of it, because some part of me wanted it to be finished before they could touch it. That instinct, it turned out, was the smartest one I had. The first strange thing happened 2 weeks later. Miss Okafor emailed to confirm our meeting with your leadership on Thursday. I had no meeting on Thursday. I wrote back to say I thought we had spoken directly and asked what meeting she meant. There was a long pause, a day, before she replied. and her reply was careful in a way that made the back of my neck cool. My apologies. I was told the founder's representative would attend on his behalf. I must have misunderstood the structure of your company. His behalf. His. My company did not have a his. My company had me and a woman named Priya who ran scheduling and 40 cleaners. There was no man representing the founder because I was the founder and I am a woman. I did what any reasonable person does. I told myself it was a mix-up. Ms. Okafor dealt with hundreds of vendors. Wires get crossed. I let it go, the way I had trained myself to let everything go, and I went back to work. But a small, cold seed had been planted, and over the next few days, it began to grow roots I could not ignore. Because I started to notice that when I called the hotel group's offices, people already seemed to know things about my company that I had not told them. They mentioned a growth plan I had never written. They referenced a family business. They said, more than once, as your brother mentioned. As your brother mentioned. I remember exactly where I was standing when a junior coordinator said that phrase to me on the phone. In the doorway of a client's kitchen with a bottle of glass cleaner in my hand. As your brother mentioned, I said, as evenly as I could. Which brother would that be? And the young man, sounding suddenly nervous, said, Mr. Marcus Hart. He's been our main contact. He said he handles the founding side of the business. The glass cleaner nearly slipped out of my fingers. I set it down on the counter very carefully. The way you set down something when your hands have started to shake and you do not want anyone to see. I need you to understand that Marcus had never cleaned a single room in his life. He had never made payroll for my company. He had never signed a contract for it, never bought a van, never washed a uniform. He had once, exactly once, 6 years earlier, helped me file a piece of paperwork at the county office because I had the flu and could not stand up straight. And he had complained the entire time about the parking. That was the sum total of his involvement in Meridian Care. And now, somehow, he had walked into the biggest opportunity of my life and introduced himself as the man who built it. I went home and I sat in my car in my own driveway for a long time before I could go inside. My daughter Ruth watched me from the window, that quiet, watchful girl, and I made myself smile and wave. Then I sat some more. I kept trying to find an innocent explanation because Marcus was still my brother. And there is a stubborn animal in all of us that does not want to believe the people we come from are capable of taking the food off our plate. But I could not find the innocent version. There was no version of, your brother handles the founding side, that did not mean Marcus had looked at the thing I bled to build and decided he would simply become its author. That was the midpoint, the moment the floor tilted. It was not that Marcus had insulted my work. He had done that my whole life. It was that he had understood, better than my mother, better than anyone, exactly how much my work was worth, precisely at the moment it became valuable. And he had moved to take the credit and the contract before I even knew the prize existed. The mockery, I realized, had never been about shame. It had been about keeping me small and quiet and easy to step in front of. You do not laugh at something for 9 years unless you are afraid that one day everyone will stop laughing. I started to gather what I knew, calmly, the way I clean a truly filthy room, one surface at a time. I called Priya, my scheduler, and I asked her, gently, whether Marcus had ever contacted the office. She went very quiet. Then she said, Della, I didn't want to worry you. He called twice last month. He asked for the client list for the hotel accounts. He said you'd approved it, that it was for a family investment thing. I gave him the Ashford contact because he's your brother and he knew all the details. She started to apologize and I stopped her. It was not her fault. Marcus had used the one currency that always works inside a family. He had used the word brother like a master key. That night, I could not sleep. So I went into the garage and I opened the old cardboard box where I keep the paper history of my company. Everything was there, layered like the rings of a tree. The first 3 apartment keys, returned and never thrown away. The receipt for my first vacuum. The county registration form with my name and the date I became a real business. And near the bottom, in a plastic sleeve to protect it, the Alder House contract from my 3rd year, with Mr. Alder's own handwriting next to my name. Founder, Meridian Care. I sat on the cold garage floor holding that paper, and for the first time in years, I did not feel embarrassed. I felt armed. The next morning, I did something I had never done in 9 years. I asked my company's lawyer, a practical woman named Sandra, who normally only heard from me about liability clauses, to pull the complete founding record of Meridian Care. The incorporation documents, the original ownership filing, the date, the signature, the sole founder listed on every single page. Me, Della Hart. No partners, no family investment thing, no Marcus. Sandra emailed it all to me within the hour, and then she called and said in her dry lawyer voice, "Della, is there something you need to tell me? Because your brother's office called last week, asking whether founder status could be, and I quote, updated to reflect current leadership." Updated? He had tried to have my name changed on the founding record itself. I want to tell you that I marched straight over to Marcus's house and threw the papers in his face. I did not. I had learned something in 9 years of cleaning up other people's messes, which is that the best response to chaos is never more chaos. It is order. It is patience. It is doing the quiet, careful work while the loud people wear themselves out. So I did not confront him. I did not warn him. I let him keep believing that I did not know, that I was still small Della, who cleans houses and never checks the paperwork. Because I understood by then that his whole plan depended on me staying asleep. Meanwhile, the family closed ranks around him, exactly as I knew they would, without even understanding what they were defending. My mother called me that week, unusually warm, and said, "Della, Marcus told us the wonderful news. A big hotel wants to work with the family business. Isn't it lovely that he's finally found a way to make something respectable out of your little cleaning thing? Something respectable out of your little cleaning thing." I gripped the phone. I asked her quietly, "Mom, whose company do you think it is?" And she said without a flicker of doubt, "Well, it's the family's, isn't it? Marcus is the one who can talk to those kinds of people."
You just do the cleaning, dear. You just do the cleaning, dear. 9 words.
I have cleaned toilets that were kinder to me than those 9 words. And yet, strangely, they steadied me because I finally saw the whole machine of it. My mother believed Marcus should have my company, not because he had earned it, but because he looked the way she thought a business owner should look. He had the collar. I had the gloves. In her mind, the collar simply outranked the gloves. And so the natural order of the world was that the man in the collar would step forward at the important moment, and the woman in the gloves would stand behind him and be grateful. Marcus had not invented that idea. He had just learned, earlier than me, how to profit from it. In the middle of those weeks, I made myself drive out to the Alder house, the little 22-room hotel that had given me my first real chance. Mr. Alder had retired, but his daughter ran it now, and she remembered me. We sat in the small lobby that still smelled faintly of lemon polish, and I told her, carefully, that a larger hotel group had been asking about my history. She smiled and said something that made my throat tighten. Dad talks about you, you know. He says you were the first person he ever hired who treated our little place like it was the finest hotel in the world. I had come there half hoping for reassurance, and I left with something better. I left remembering exactly who I had always been, long before Marcus decided to become me. There was one more clue, and it was the one that removed my last flicker of doubt. Priya, my scheduler, forwarded me an email chain she had stumbled across, a thread between Marcus and a contact at the hotel group. In it, Marcus had written, in his confident, careless way, "Happy to update the founding paperwork to reflect current leadership before the reception, so everything's clean on your end." Before the reception. He had a timeline. He had not simply borrowed my name in a few loose conversations. He had a plan to make the theft permanent, on paper, in front of the exact people I most wanted to impress on the exact night that mattered most. Reading that email, I stopped feeling hurt. Hurt is soft. What I felt instead was clear and cool and useful, like cold water on a burn. That night, I sat with Ruth at the kitchen table, and I showed her, gently, some of what was happening. Because I did not want her to learn later that I had hidden a hard truth from her. She read Marcus's email twice, her young face very serious, and then she asked the question that only a child would ask so plainly. Why does everyone believe him and not you? I thought for a long time before I answered, because she deserved a real answer, not a comfortable one. Because he looks like what they expect a boss to look like, I said, and I look like what they expect a cleaner to look like. People are lazy about the truth, Ruth. They believe the picture instead of checking the paper. She frowned and said, "Then we should make them check the paper." I looked at my daughter, and I thought, yes, out of the mouths of children. We should make them check the paper. A few days later, Marcus himself called me, oily and cheerful. "Sis," he said, "I've been doing some networking, opening some doors for the business. There's a hotel thing coming up, a fancy reception. I think it's best if I take point on the client relationship. You know, present the professional face. You'd be nervous in a room like that anyway. Just keep the cruise running and leave the big picture to me." I closed my eyes. Present the professional face. I said, in my most agreeable voice, "That sounds sensible, Marcus." "You've always been better in a room than me," he practically purred. "Exactly. Glad you get it. And hey, maybe wear something nice to the reception. Blend in. Don't mention the mop stuff. Don't mention the mop stuff." I said I would be sure to dress appropriately. I meant it in a way he did not understand. I hung up, and I sat with the strangest calm I have ever felt. I was not going to fight Marcus for the microphone. I was not going to send angry emails or make scenes or beg my mother to believe me. I had learned long ago that you cannot argue someone out of a belief they need in order to feel superior. What I could do was let the truth arrive on its own, in front of the right people, carried by a piece of paper that Marcus did not know existed and could not talk his way around. I called Miss Okafor at the hotel group. I told her I would very much like to attend the opening reception. I asked her, casually, whether she still hoped to recognize the founder that evening. There was a small, warm smile in her voice when she said, "More than ever." The 3 weeks before the reception were the longest of my life. I kept working, of course. Payroll does not pause for drama. I cleaned a law office and a penthouse and a pediatric clinic, and every doorknob I polished. I thought about the box in my garage and the paper inside it. Ruth, my daughter, could tell something was happening. One night, she sat on the edge of my bed and said, "Mom, are you okay? You've got your work face on. But at home?" I laughed. I told her the truth, more or less. I said, "Some people are going to try to say they built the thing that I built. And instead of yelling, I'm going to let them dig the hole. And then I'm going to hand everyone a flashlight." She thought about that and said, "That's kind of terrifying," I said. "It's kind of the point." Marcus, in those weeks, became a caricature of himself. He posted photographs online, standing in front of glass buildings. He referred to himself, in one post, as a hospitality entrepreneur scaling a family-founded service brand. He bought a new watch. He told our uncle that he had always seen the potential in the cleaning space and had brought structure to a passion project. My mother forwarded me one of his posts with the message, "So proud." She had never once written those words to me. I did not reply. I was learning, finally, in my late 30s, that silence in the face of a lie is not weakness if you are holding the receipt. 2 days before the reception, I did one last careful thing. I made 3 clean copies of the founding record and the Alderhouse contract. And I gave the originals to Sandra the lawyer for safekeeping. And I put 1 copy in a slim leather folder that I would carry into the reception myself. I was not going to wave it around. I was not going to ambush anyone. But I have spent my whole career learning that the person who is prepared does not have to be loud. The prepared person can afford to be gentle because the truth is already sitting quietly in her bag, doing all the heavy lifting. I chose a simple charcoal blazer, the good one, the one I had worn to that first mocking dinner. I liked the symmetry of it. The Ashford Meridian, on the night of its opening, was the most beautiful room I had ever stood in. And I had stood in a great many beautiful rooms with a bucket in my hand. Marble the color of cream, a chandelier that fell from the ceiling like frozen rain, waiters gliding with trays of small, perfect things. My family arrived together, a little unit of nervous grandeur. My mother wore her best coat and kept touching her own necklace. Marcus wore a suit that fit him like a boast, and he walked, as always, like the meeting could now begin. He spotted me by a pillar and came over and murmured, "Remember, let me do the talking. Just smile and look pleasant." I smiled and looked pleasant. I am very good at that. I have had years of practice. For the first hour, Marcus worked the room exactly as I knew he would. He shook hands, he laughed his head-back laugh. He introduced himself to anyone who would hold still as the founder of Meridian Care, the company behind tonight's flawless finish. He gestured at the gleaming floors as if he had personally coaxed the shine out of them. Floors that my crew and I had spent 2 nights on our knees perfecting. My mother trailed behind him, glowing, telling a woman in pearls, "That's my son. He built all this." My father stood by the bar, looking, as he always did, mildly confused about which of his children he was supposed to be admiring. And I stood by my pillar, holding a glass of water and a slim leather folder, and I waited. Then Miss Okafor stepped up to a small microphone near the grand staircase, and the room quieted, and I felt my own heartbeat in my throat. She thanked everyone for coming. She spoke about the hotel, about excellence, about the people who make a place shine. And then she said, "Before we continue, we have a tradition in our company. We believe you cannot understand a house until you understand who built it. So tonight, we would like to publicly thank and recognize the founder of the company that has made this building glow, whose reputation for care is the reason we sought her out. Would the founder of Meridian Care please come forward?" The room turned. And Marcus, God help him, buttoned his jacket, put on his warmest smile, and stepped toward the staircase with his hand already half raised in a wave. My mother clasped her hands to her chest. I saw the whole future she wanted flash across her face, her son and the top of the marble stairs. The family finally elevated. Marcus reached the bottom step and opened his mouth to say thank you, and Miss Okafor, looking not at him, but past him, at me, said gently into the microphone, "I'm sorry, sir. I don't believe we've met. I'm looking for Della Hart. She's the name on our founding contract." I have replayed that sentence 1,000 times. She's the name on our founding contract. It was not cruel. Miss Okafor did not know the whole family war she had just walked into the middle of. She was simply doing the correct thing, the thing almost no one in my life had ever done, which was to look at the paper and read the actual name. Marcus froze on the step with his hand still up. The smile did not leave his face all at once. It slid off it, slowly, like something losing its grip. And 200 beautifully dressed people watched a man realize, in real time, that he had walked up a staircase that did not belong to him. I set down my glass of water. I walked forward, past my brother, and I did not gloat, and I did not hurry. I have carried heavy things up many staircases. This was the lightest thing I had ever carried, and the most important. When I reached Mrs. Okafor, she smiled and said warmly for the microphone, "Miss Hart, it's an honor." For those who don't know, Della founded Meridian Care 9 years ago with, as I understand it, a single mop and 3 apartments. A soft laugh moved through the room, the good kind, the impressed kind. And tonight, her company keeps 200 rooms flawless. We wanted the founder herself to sign our partnership, in person, publicly. Then she did the thing that ended it, though she had no idea she was ending anything. She reached under the podium and produced a document, and she said, "In fact, when your company was recommended to us, one of your very first clients, Mr. Alder, sent us a copy of your original contract because he wanted us to know the kind of person we'd be working with. He'd kept it all these years." And she held it up, and there it was, 6 feet from my brother's face, in Mr. Alder's own handwriting beside my name. Founder, Meridian Care. The tired, kind man from my 3rd year had, without my ever asking, reached across 9 years to hand me the exact weapon I needed. And he had done it out of nothing but respect. I did not look at Marcus in that moment. I did not have to. I could feel him behind me, the way you feel a draft from an open door. What I did instead was look out at my mother. She was standing very still, with her hands still half raised toward the staircase, her whole story collapsing behind her eyes. And I watched her do the arithmetic she had refused to do for 9 years. The gloves had built the marble. The collar had only ever borrowed it. I did not feel triumph, exactly. I felt something quieter and older and sadder than triumph. I felt seen, at last, in the one place I had never expected it, by strangers, over a piece of paper. While my own family finally ran out of ways to look away. I signed the partnership that night at the little table by the staircase with a good pen in front of everyone. Okafor shook my hand, and the room applauded. And it was not thunderous. It was better than thunderous. It was genuine. Then the evening moved on the way evenings do, and the marble kept gleaming.
And the small, perfect things kept circulating on their trays.
I found a quiet corner, and it was there, of course, that Marcus found me, because men like Marcus cannot leave a wound alone. He was pale, and his jaw was tight, and he hissed. "You made me look like a fool in front of everyone." I looked at him for a long moment. Then I said, "No, Marcus, you did that. I just stopped standing where you told me to." Here is the part that surprised me most. I did not want to destroy him. I could have. I had the founding record and the contract and a very good lawyer. And Marcus had told the hotel group and half our family that he founded a company he had never lifted a finger for. I could have made calls. I could have posted the paperwork online next to his hospitality entrepreneur photos. I could have made my mother watch her golden son become a cautionary tale. But I have cleaned up enough messes to know that some stains are not yours to scrub. And some people ruin themselves faster and more thoroughly than you ever could. So I did the coldest, kindest thing available to me. I simply told the truth. Once, clearly. And then I let it be. I sent one email the next morning to Ms. Okafor and to my own lawyer. It said, plainly, that going forward, all communication regarding Meridian Care would come directly from me, its sole founder, and that no family member had authority to represent the company in any capacity. I attached the founding record. I did not editorialize. I did not mention Marcus by name in anything ugly. I did not need to. The document did what documents do. It sat there, calm and dated and true, and it made every future lie impossible. Ms. Okafor wrote back one line. "Understood, and frankly, unsurprised. We look forward to working with the founder." The founder. I framed that email. It hangs in my office now, next to the Alder House contract. My mother did not call for 2 weeks, which for her was a form of mourning. When she finally did, her voice was small and careful in a way I had never heard from her. She did not apologize. People like my mother rarely find the actual words, but she said, "The Hendersons saw the announcement in the hotel's newsletter. They said, 'My goodness, Diane, your daughter founded that whole thing?' I didn't know what to say, and I understood that this was, in her language, as close to an apology as I would ever get. The daughter she had been afraid to mention to the neighbors was now the reason the neighbors were impressed. The gloves had, in the end, outshone the collar, even in the one court that mattered to her. I want to be honest about the aftermath, because these stories often end with everyone healed and hugging, and life is not that tidy. Marcus and I are not close now. We are polite at the rare gathering. He has a new venture, something involving cryptocurrency, and the family toasts it, and I let them. Because I no longer need my family to understand my worth in order to know it. That was the real change, in the end. For 9 years, I had been quietly waiting for them to hand me my dignity, as if it were theirs to give. The night on the staircase, I stopped waiting. I picked it up myself. It had been in the box in the garage the whole time, in a plastic sleeve, next to a receipt for a secondhand vacuum. My daughter Ruth was there that night, in a blue dress, and she watched the whole thing from beside my father. On the drive home, she was quiet for a long time, and then she said, "Mom, when Miss Okafor called for the founder, and Uncle Marcus stood up. "I was so scared for you," I said. "I know, baby." "I was a little scared too," she said. "But then you just walked up. Like it was nothing." I told her it was not nothing. I told her it was 9 years of getting up at 4 in the morning and doing the work so well that one day a stranger kept a piece of paper because he respected me. And I told her the thing I most needed her to hear, the thing no one had ever told me. I said, "There is no such thing as embarrassing work. There is only work done with pride and work done without it. Never let anyone make you ashamed of the honest thing that feeds you." I thought about that for a while, watching the city lights slide by. And then she said something I will carry to the end of my life. She said, "So the mop won?" I laughed until my eyes stung. "Yes," I said. The mop won. And that is the truest sentence anyone has said about my whole life. The mop won. Not because it turned out to be glamorous, and not because a fancy hotel finally made it look respectable. The mop won because I never once put it down out of shame. Even when the people I loved most held up my uniform like a dead animal and laughed. I kept doing the work, and the work, quietly, patiently, kept a record of itself. And the record was my name. So let me leave you with this, wherever you are listening from tonight. Somebody in your life may have decided that what you do is small. They may laugh at your hands, your uniform, your hours, the humble true thing that keeps you standing. Let them laugh. Do the work so well that the room speaks for you. Keep your receipts, keep your contracts, keep the quiet paper trail of everything you do. Actually build, because one day someone will ask to meet the founder. And when they do, you want your name to be the only honest answer in the room. Dignity is not given to you at a table by people with cleaner collars. It is something you build, one careful surface at a time, until it shines so brightly that even the ones who mocked you have to shade their eyes. Thank you for listening. Now, go and take pride in your work.